I asked about the Shia. I was like, who are the Shia? Don't worry about them. Just avoid them. Da da da. You know, it's in their Aqidah to lie. You know, they do taqi all the time. And I was like, whatever, fine. So I left the Shia thing alone.
And we received a sheikh from Sudan. His English skills were limited, but when he moved to the Virgin Islands, he noticed that minority of Shias in the community. And one of the first speeches that he gave was a speech rather critical of Tashayyu and of followers of Ahl Bayt al-Rasul. So, me being a new convert and me not knowing the difference between Sunni or Shia, when I heard this speech of his, well, it became imperative to me that I should know who are the Shias also, because if they are disbelievers, and if they are as dangerous as the Sheikh is saying that they are, then I should know about them, and I should be on my guard and be wary of them. So I started trying to learn more about Shias after hearing that how dangerous and how kafir and how bad they were. So I wanted to learn more.
They're a Shia family from Middle East, and the knowledge which they provided me, and also not just the knowledge, but also the attitude and the way in which they invited me towards the Ahlul Bayt. Many of my Sunni brothers, unfortunately, the way they would try to bring me towards their way of thinking would be to kind of highlight negative points about Shiaism, whether the Shia brothers and sisters would actually, one thing which I'll say, my cousin in Woking, who actually helped me to revert, the first thing he said to me is, whatever you want to do, if you want to, however you want to pray, and whatever belief, whatever books you want to read is entirely up to you. He didn't mind whether I became Sunni or anything. It wouldn't affect our relationship at all, and he would actually be happy for me if I became Sunni. And this, in particular, is what made me think, well, if this is the attitude which I'm being told by the Shia brothers of mine, then perhaps Shiaism has a very good way of thinking, which I like.
عقيدتنا نحن أهل السنة والجماعة ألا ندس أنوفنا فيما شجر بين أصحاب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أبدا. لا نقول فعل معاوية، فعل علي، علي أفضل من معاوية، معاوية أفضل من علي، عمرو بن العاص، أبو موسى الأشعري. لا نتكلم في واحد منهم أبدا، وإنما نترك ما شجر بين أصحاب النبي إلى ربهم سبحانه وتعالى، مع إيماننا بأنهم أفضل القرون بإطلاق، أفضل القرون بإطلاق، ثم ندع ما حدث أو ما شجر بينهم لله عز وجل، هو الذي يحكم بينهم.
نعم. الله أكبر، هذا ختام رائع وجميل.
فما موقف أهل السنة من الكتب التي فيها ذكر ما شجر بين الصحابة وقتالهم رضي الله عنهم؟ قال الذهبي رحمه الله في سير أعلام النبلاء: تقرر الكف عن كثير مما شجر بين الصحابة وقتالهم رضي الله عنهم أجمعين، وما زال يمر بنا ذلك في الدواوين والكتب والأجزاء، ولكن أكثر ذلك منقطع وضعيف وبعضه كذب، وهذا فيما بأيدينا وبين علمائنا، فينبغي طيه وإخفاؤه، لا إذاعته وبثه ونشره. قال فينبغي طيه وإخفاؤه بل إعدامه.
This is the Sunni Sheikh of the masjid. He told me, brother, Islamic history is a black and bloody history, and it has no relevance to us today. Don't read it. Being a person who had studied the writings of Marcus Garvey, Marcus Garvey is like a prophet to Rastafarians. Marcus Garvey has a famous saying where he says, a people without knowledge of their history is like a tree without roots. So when this Sunni Sheikh is going to tell me that Islamic history is irrelevant, has no relevance, it's black and it's bloody, don't study it, an alarm bell went off in my mind. I felt that he was trying to keep me away from something. And so this pushed me in the direction to study more.
الله تبارك وتعالى أعطانا قدرة الفهم في العقيدة في كثير من المسائل. وإن هو أعطانا قدرة الفهم لابد أن يفهم العقيدة، لابد أن تفهم العقيدة. الإنسان لابد أن يفهم بما يعتقد، لا يعتقد هكذا يعني بالأشياء ليست قابلة للفهم وبمجرد التعصب يعتقد بها. ونفس الشيء ها هنا وجدته. وبعد يعني كنت حتى أتباحث مع بعض المشايخ ها هنا هم يقولون عن العقل ليس له دور في الدين، وسؤال عني لهم إن لم يكن للعقل دور في الدين فيعني إسلامي باطل إذن. ليش؟ أنا أسلمت لأجل العقل فقط، وإن لم يكن للعقل دور في الدين أنا لابد أن أبقى نصراني. وكل واحد في أي مكان ولد لابد أن يبقى مثلا، لابد أن يبقى نصراني من ولد نصراني، لابد أن يبقى يهودي من ولد يهوديا، لابد أن يبقى بكري من ولد بكري، لابد أن يبقى بوذيا من ولد بوذيا، إن لم يكن للعقل دور في الدين.
طب وايه اللي حصل؟ اخطأ جبريل، ما خدش باله ونزل على سيدنا محمد بالغلط. قال لهم طيب يعني يا اخوانا ما فيه رب سبحانه وتعالى اللي ارسله، رب اللي كلف سيدنا جبريل، سكت ازاي الرب ده سبحانه وتعالى؟ يعني ازاي يعني يسكت؟ كيف يسكت الرب على هذا؟ قالوا لا 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 خلاص هو اقر بالامر الواقع. ايه ده بتكلم في ايه؟
Another time they told us at the masjid that when Shias finish their prayer, they say, Khana Amin, Khana Amin, Khana Amin. Amin is Jibra'il. That Jibra'il did khiyanat. That Jibra'il was treacherous. That he went to Muhammad instead of Ali. So when I would hear these things from Ahl Sunnah, immediately I would go to the Shias and ask them about that. You know, for instance, with this Khana Amin, when I went and prayed with them, when they finished their prayer, I was listening to hear what they said. And surely I heard them say, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
بل إن الرسالة على حد قولهم كانت نزلت على علي فأخطأ جبريل وأعطاها لمحمد.
يا شيخ عمر هذا يحصل في صلاتهم في كل صلاة، كل ما يصلي واحد. لو شفتم أنت في مكة لما نكون احنا في الحج فبتلاقي بيعمل كده 1 2 3. هو ماذا يقصد بها؟ يقول فيها تاه الأمين تاه الأمين تاه الأمين، يعني سيدنا جبريل عليه السلام تاه في رسالته، فبدل أن ينزل على علي نزل على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. الله المستعان.
I was like, nah man, that's not true. Oh, but I'm from Yemen, I know the Houthis. Okay, but this is their beliefs, man. You know what I'm saying? Like the classic, Gabriel made a mistake, Gabriel. I was like, nah man, it's Allahu Akbar 3 times, man. I was like, nah. They're like, yo, you better calm down, Haroon. I want to think you're a Shia. I was like, whatever, man. And
يعني لهم قرآن يختلف عن القرآن. أنا هقرأ حضرتك آية بس من قرآن الشيعة أو سورة قرآن الشيعة. مثلا في سورة ألم نشرح لك صدرك، عشان الناس تعرف بس يعني. في سورة الشرح ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك، دي قرآن الشيعة بعلي صهرك فإذا فرغت من نبوتك فانصب عليا وليا وإلى ربك فارغب في ذلك. ده قرآن الشيعة.
إنا لله.
كنت أذهب إلى عدة مساجد ومدارس في موسكو، وبعدين تكلمت مع بعض الأشخاص وعرفت هناك موجود أشخاص يسمون شيعة، وأنا كما كنت أسمي نفسي من أهل السنة والجماعة أو فقط من أهل السنة، كنت أفكر يعني من هم الشيعة؟ نحن أهل السنة، يعني نتبع ماذا؟ القرآن والسنة. والشيعة هم ماذا؟ ما يقبلون السنة، فقط يقبلون القرآن. ورحت إلى بعض المشايخ أو أئمة المساجد في موسكو وسألت واحد وهو معروف صار وإلى الآن هو إمام مسجد في موسكو، قال سألته هل نحن نقبل ونتبع القرآن والسنة والشيعة يقبلون فقط القرآن؟ قال لا، الشيعة القرآن هم في بعض الموارد لا يقبلون. طبعا أنا صدقت هذا الكلام في ذاك الوقت. ليش؟ يعني ما كنت أفكر هو إمام مسجد إما لا يعرف إما يكذب، وهو طبعا الظاهر كذب. لماذا؟ لأنه درس في الأزهر أكثر من 5 سنوات ولا يمكن هو لا يعرف هذه الأشياء، يعني بسيطة، الكتب موجودة. وإذا هو إذا لا يعرف لماذا يقول هذه الأشياء؟ الله سبحانه وتعالى يقول ولا تقف ما ليس لك به علم، يعني أمر صريح، إذا لا تعلم لا تقول. زين، لكن هو قال لي هكذا، وأنا تركت هذا البحث. قلت يعني إذا أشخاص ما يقبلون القرآن ما عندي شغل معهم يعني.
So what I used to do is, everything that Ahlul Sunnah would tell me about Shias, I would take it to Dr. Abdul Ghani. Anything that they said to me, I would go there and tell him what they said. I would also watch him very closely. I mean, as an example, they told me that Shias have a different Quran. So when I went to his house, when he wasn't looking, I took his Quran. I took it back to my house and I compared it to the Quran that I had in my own home. And I saw that it was identical. Of course, I took it back to him. I didn't keep it. I took it back to him.
من عهد الخليفة طبعا علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله عنه، وأنا اعتمدت أن أقول علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله عنه، لأن هناك من بعض الكتاب يصفه بصفتين. الصفة الأولى وش هي مشايخ؟ ها؟ أحسنت، كرم الله وجهه. والثانية وصفه بالإمام. هاتان الصفتان أيها الأخوة لا يخص فيها علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله عنه. إذن وصف علي بن أبي طالب بالإمام أو بكرم الله وجهه، هذه كما قال بعض أهل العلم في نزعة التشيع، فلا يقال علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله عنه.
One of the aspects of coming to Shiism was one imam that I connected with always the most, that helped me with the transition to Islam, with the permission of Allah, was Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salam. Because even when you read history and you hear about all the different aspects of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali, whether it was in battle, his bravery, how almost all the battles that he defended Rasulullah, that he defended Islam, that he helped save the Ummah from the opposing enemy, whether it had been in the battle of Badr, whether it had been in the battle of Uhud, with all the different, all the main people on the opposing side who were the best fighters, Imam Ali alayhi salam, destroyed them. He wiped them out. That Rasulullah said that La fata illa Ali, la sayfun illa dhu fakar. In the battle of Uhud, when Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was fighting and he was defending Rasulullah, that he was fighting so hard that his sword broke. So Angel Jibreel alayhi salam came down and they gave him dhu fakar, a sword from the heavens. So this is one aspect, but also as well that this was the main dispute between Shia and Sunni. Imam Ali alayhi salam, this is the dividing line. That Imam Ali was the one that they say no, he was just a Sahaba, just a normal, ordinary person. No, the Shia say no, he was a divine Imam who was divinely sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So reading the different hadith about Imam Ali, Rasulullah said in one hadith, Zayyinu mujalisakum bi dhikra Ali. And ever since then, there was always that intense and close connection with Amir al-Mu'mineen, because reading about him, you know, it just impresses you, the different characteristics, his character, his worship, everything about Amir al-Mu'mineen. It impressed an individual to say that this had to be somebody sent by Allah. This can't be an ordinary individual who's just a normal companion, but it had to have been somebody who was sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
فقد كان علي رضي الله عنه يتفقد قتلاه ويمر على قتلاه وقتلى معاوية فيقول غفر الله لكم غفر الله لكم وللفريقين جميعا.
If Imam Hussein was on one side and Yazid was on another, they must have been fighting for two different things. Yazid was the one who was beheading people. Yazid was the one who was oppressing people exactly the same way as Daesh are doing now. So you can see that the Imam was prepared to sacrifice himself and his own family in opposition to that cause, which is exactly what the sort of thing we're seeing today. So from that point of view, the importance of the Kerbala episode is to portray, particularly to non-Muslims, that there is an alternative version which the events of Ashura and the events of Kerbala highlight. Constantly, well, look what he did to the women, look what he did to Zainab. That there is a version of Islam which promotes the rights of women, which promotes the interests of women, which promotes the development of the community and of individuals, and it's not about killing and slaying and keeping people in a state of continual oppression.
And the bus drove past a Shia information centre, and so I decided to go in and give salams to the Shia brothers there and find out what they said. I'm never content being told by others what these third party says, and I decided to go and talk to them. What I found there was an intellectual discourse about religion, a concern about historiography and accuracy, and thus I'd actually unwittingly found the branch of Islam that suited me. And so I joined the Hausa in Birmingham, and for the next, I think, 5 years I
actually began looking at Shia Islam first. And then when I compared it with Sunni Islam, decided that the Shia version made much more sense. And so in June of last year, 2006, I accepted the faith, became a Shia Muslim. Now, the question comes, why did I like Shia Islam over Sunni Islam? To me, logic and coherence make much sense. They're important factors in one's faith. What I saw in Shia Islam, looking at the 5 roots of the faith, was a constructive building on foundations. First of all, you have the belief in God. You follow that with an understanding of how God interacts with human beings, the justice of God. Then the next root is that God sends prophets to let mankind know what his requirements are to worship him, to honor him. The next step is that God also sends imams to carry on the message in between the sending of prophets. And finally, that there is indeed an afterlife. To me, that progression made far more sense than the Sunni presentation of the 5 pillars, in which the only basic doctrinal point is that of the fact that God is one. The rest of the points all deal with practice. And the thing that I started mulling over was, how can one base one's faith on a set of practices? It makes far more sense to look at doctrine, and then on the doctrine base your practices. So for me, the 5 roots of Shia Islam made far more sense than the 5 pillars of Sunni Islam.
وكذلك هو في مسند الإمام أحمد بنفس الألفاظ تقريبا. وعند الدارمي في السنن عن زيد بن أرقم قال: قام رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يوما خطيبا فحمد الله وأثنى عليه، ثم قال: يا أيها الناس، إنما أنا بشر يوشك أن يأتيني رسول ربي فأجيب، وإني تارك فيكم الثقلين، أولهما كتاب الله فيه الهدى والنور، فتمسكوا بكتاب الله وخذوا به. فحث عليه ورغب فيه، ثم قال: وأهل بيتي أذكركم الله في أهل بيتي 3 مرات.
Why it is that I became a Shia Muslim, and why after 4 years I decided to reject Sunni Islam. The main reason, in fact the 2 main reasons, are based on a single hadith. And this hadith is located within Sahih Muslim. It's in book 31, it's hadith number 5920. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, I am leaving among you two weighty things. The one being the book of Allah, in which there is right guidance and light, so hold fast to the book of Allah and adhere to it. He exhorted to hold fast to the book of Allah and then said, the second are the members of my household, Ahlul Bayt. I remind you of your duties to them, the members of my family, to your duties to the members of my family.
مثلا واحد يقرأ ويفهم في كل حديث، يعني محمد مثلا قال من كنت معه لا فعلي المولى، ويعني لا معنى هذا الحديث يكون بمعنى يعني مولاه يعني صديق، يعني كل المؤمنين أصدقاء، هذا لا يمكن يفهم هكذا.
And I began reading it. When I got to the section on Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, I was flabbergasted, stunned, shocked to find out that Imam Hussein had been surrounded at Karbala and killed. I couldn't fathom it. I couldn't believe it, that the grandson of the Prophet, whom even as Sunnis we learn that Prophet loved him so much, that the fact that he was surrounded and killed by Muslims, it shocked me. So this I had to go to the masjid with. And I went to the masjid and I called the sheikh and I said, Sheikh, you have to explain this to me. What happened at Karbala?
And it was actually around the time of Ashura. And so I was like, okay, what are you doing on Ashura? I'm gonna fast, Habibi. I'm gonna fast. When did Imam Hussein alayhi salam die? The Ashura? No, yeah. How come you never heard about it on the minbar? I don't know. And he kept it at that. It's insane. It's insane.
إذا من هم هؤلاء الاثنى عشر؟ نقول الجواب على هذا السؤال من شقين. الشق الأول هو الأصل، لا نعلمهم، لأن هذا خبر من أخبار الغيب، لا يتوقف عليه حكم، لا يتوقف عليه حكم، وإنما هو خبر، وإنما هو إيش؟ خبر. هذا أمر، ولذلك عرفنا أو لم نعرفهم لا يترتب عليه شيء.
12 خليفة كلهم يكونون من قريش. طيب تعالوا نعد يا جماعة. هذا أبو بكر، هذا عمر، هذا عثمان، هذا علي، هذا من تولى بعد علي تولى الحسن 6 أشهر، ثم تولى معاوية، ثم تولى يزيد بن معاوية، ثم يلا وامش على الخلفاء. يمكن وتعالي لو خلفاء بني أمية وخلفاء بني العباس، يعني دولة بني أمية أو بني العباس استمرت 600 سنة، الدولة العثمانية شوف كم استمرت. طيب هل هذا يا جماعة؟ طيب الآن يمكن قرابة 5,000 خليفة يمكن.
12 caliphs? Who this hadith says there'll be 12 caliphs after me, all from Quraysh. Who are the 12? But this guy down the street can name me 12 like that. Oh no, don't listen to them. You know, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Muawiyah, Yazid. I'm like, okay, sure.
The more I started to research about the topics, about the imams, about the followers of the Prophet, about the Prophet himself, the way he used to pray, things like this, and issues, beliefs, topics, stories, everything. Eventually, I came to the realization that Shiaism and the way in which they follow the imams after the Prophet, and the imams themselves were such inspirational people in their time. Even to this day, their sayings, their stories, and what they stood for still stands in the modern day. The way that they stood up against injustice, the way that they fought for the weaker people in society at the time, is just such a fantastic example of how human beings should be. How can I follow anyone else except the Ahlul Bayt, who are by far, in my entire life, I've never seen a more perfect example of how a family, how people should be in life, not just religiously, but also in society, the way that they act to people and the way that they are with everybody on this planet. So in the end, it was really down to studying more about the imams, studying more about Shias themselves, and listening to the debates and discussions between Sunni and Shia, which really led me to believe that Shia was the one for me, because my beliefs were far more similar to Shia than to the Sunni. And although we are all Muslims at the end of the day, the way that I choose to follow God is the way in following Imam Ali alayhi salam.
يعني ينزل ربنا عز وجل في كل ليلة ولا يقتضي النزول أن يخلو منه العرش. إذن استواء لا يخلو منه عرشه، وكذلك عند النزول لا يخلو منه عرشه.
وعند مثلا الفرقة البكرية في مسألة توحيد الأسماء والصفات نفس الشيء، هم يقولون مثلا لله يد ليس كالأيدي، أم يد ليس يدا. هذا أصلا لا يفهم، كل واحد لا يستطيع أن يفهم ماذا يعني يد غير يد، رجل غير الرجل، جلوس لا كالجلوس، والعين لا كالعين، وأصلا هذه الأقوال ليست قابلة للفهم. وأنا بنفسي أعتقد أن الله تبارك وتعالى أعطانا قدرة الفهم في العقيدة في كثير من المسائل، وإن هو أعطانا قدرة الفهم لابد أن يفهم العقيدة، لابد أن تفهم العقيدة. الإنسان لابد أن يفهم بما يعتقد، لا يعتقد هكذا يعني بالأشياء ليست قابلة للفهم وبمجرد التعصب يعتقد بها.
And so I read Then I Was Guided. And the way Dr. Tijani went about it, how he would only take hadith that both sides agree on, and of course the Quran. So I was like, you know, that sounds pretty foolproof. So I did it, and I would just, even before I accepted Shia Islam, I would be defending the Shia. Like there was a Yemeni deli they used to support my dawah, so they had like pamphlets and they gave out all the Qurans, and so I was like, no, man, I'm telling you, they pray towards Karbala. And that was actually the first question when I got to Masjid al-Bayt. I was like, what direction, what city is that? The Kaaba, or Mecca. That's not Karbala? No, where do you, come on. Our Qibla is the Qibla. And it just blew my mind. It just blew my mind.
So certainly because of Tashayyu being more logical, having more reasonable answers, in addition to the irrefutable proofs that exist in Quran, in Ahadith, in history, we became a Shia. However, that thirst for knowledge had been ignited now. I had been through this period where running between the Sunni Masjid and the Shia Center and talking and asking and investigating and perusing and studying. Now I decided to myself, no, I won't be led astray anymore by this person or that. I want to go and study for myself. And so this is what opened this chapter in my life.
The more I started to research about the topics, about the imams, about the followers of the Prophet, about the Prophet himself, the way he used to pray, things like this, and issues, beliefs, topics, stories, everything. Eventually, I came to the realization that Shiaism and the way in which they follow the imams after the Prophet and the imams themselves were such inspirational people in their time. Even to this day, their sayings, their stories, and what they stood for still stands in the modern day. The way that they stood up against injustice, the way that they fought for the weaker people in society at the time, is just such a fantastic example of how human beings should be. How can I follow anyone else except the Ahlul Bayt, who are by far, in my entire life, I've never seen a more perfect example of how a family, how people should be in life, not just religiously, but also in society, the way that they act to people and the way that they are with everybody on this planet. So in the end, it was really down to studying more about the imams, studying more about Shias themselves, and listening to the debates and discussions between Sunni and Shia, which really led me to believe that Shia was the one for me, because my beliefs were far more similar to Shia than to the Sunni. And although we are all Muslims at the end of the day, the way that I choose to follow God is the way in following Imam Ali alayhi salam.